fins for older windsurfing boards. The questions come up a few times, even on a few of my videos on my little channel, regarding sailing the old longboards and kind of what sort of fin do you go for. When you're using gear as old as mine, you're going back to kind of a different era of windsurfing. So fins wise, when you get to sort of like the early mid-90s and all of the kind of bolt through systems, i.e. anything that aren't these fins, they basically get good and they get kind of reliable. Prior to that, and kind of my boards are all from sort of like the late 80s, early 90s, very early 90s. These, call them what you will really, nut and bolt, Euro box, US box for the more kind of American style ones, which are a different box height, but we'll get to that. These, I mean, pretty much anything was tried really in terms of shape, and the thing to kind of know, and it does worry people sometimes, is the fin boxes on these older boards, they can't take the load that kind of modern fin boxes do. So even back in the day when people were racing these, you know, these days people think, oh, bigger is better in terms of fins. The reality is that people were probably not using anything much bigger than this. You know, this is the fin I use in my Equipe, and this is, you know, maybe 35 centimeters or something like that. What you're not going to be able to do is put a sort of like 50 centimeter fin into these boxes, and neither are you going to find one. I mean, these are pretty old fins really, and by the time you get to sort of like the late 90s, the only boards using kind of a nut and bolt style fin would be a wave board, where you would have a super kind of swept back fin. I mean, this is an old one, but still, you know, pretty much the design they use today. Except this old one's got a slot, and these slots are what they were supposed to do was prevent spin out, basically, to give more grip, prevent spin out on the board. So in terms of designs, I think if you're using these older boards, the thing is pretty much like anything can work. So if you've got a fin and you're not too sure, I would say make do with what you've got. The good thing with these is that they're hanging around in people's garages, they're hanging around in people's lofts, and so this little collection is what I've built up just from sort of like, you buy a board, you get given a couple of fins really. And it's a bit of a tour through the wild and wacky really, because there are some interesting ones. I mean, if you start with kind of what can you use, what's most useful, I use this one on the Cat at the moment. This is a more swept back kind of fin. The swooshy ones, the swept back ones tend to be, or they're supposed to be better for kind of turning and jibing, whereas more of a upright one, that's going to give you lots of drive and lots of speed. Kind of working down the range, I guess you've got another group here in terms of, again, sort of like quite sort of upright designs. So this one is a Sunshine brand made in West Germany. These were like a pretty big like brand in sort of the 90s. And here, this one's an F-Hot, and I've had this one probably 25 years. It came with the repair tab on it. These metal tabs of if you so where your bolt goes through, if the fin grounds and it snaps off, which was a pretty common thing to happen, then you get this metal tab that you can fit on there. I mean, you can probably still buy these. The reality being that, you know, for fitting them, they were always a lot of hassle, because you had to sort of actually file this part out to make them flush. If you leave them sticking out, like this one's been done on the wave fin, this did actually fit my old wave board without being kind of dug in flush, but you may be able to see it's better to kind of do them so that they're flush, because again, the best fin for you is probably the one that fits your fin box. And in this one I've got this old Mistral, and you can see it's nice and solid. Sometimes you get them and they end up with quite a lot of wobble side to side, and you find them packed out with everything from duct tape to kind of old bits of cut up credit card and things like that. Then we get to kind of the bizarre ones. I mean, I've never used this one, but you can see it's a see-through fin, kind of like it's marked shallow, and kind of similar designs they do now for like a weed beater type fin, you know, make sure the weed doesn't catch on it. Maybe not swept enough to be that, but the brand is Surf Partner. Fair enough, never tried it, so I don't know if it would actually fit. The box looks kind of deeper than some of these other fins, but who's to say. This one's one of the few fins I ever bought new, and you can see the problem around fit there. I actually built this one out a little bit. I think I sanded it down a bit to fit one fin box and then actually built it up, as you can see. Not the best job in the world with a bit of Dr. Dings, but it did the job. And used this one as a longboard fin, but it was also used it on my old Mistral Screamer as well. I had an 80s Screamer, and this was a pretty good fin for when I had that board in the 90s to use in that one. Nice fin. What have we got left? Okay, this is the one that I guess if you were really going to carry a spare fin, this would be the one to carry, because you probably could fit it in a bum bag or something. So just a small fin. Not sure where I got this one from. It kind of looks like you could use it on a sup board or something if they had, you know, that kind of fin box track in there. But yeah, no, really don't know. Quite a small fin. Good for beginners, maybe, teaching beginners. I mean, really, again, I wouldn't be using a longboard like this to teach beginners, but if you did find yourself in that situation, or any board with kind of a nut and bolt style fin box track, the trick used to be any old fin, preferably your cheapest, most plasticky one, and saw them off so that they're really short. But again, a small fin like that could work. Basically, the smaller the fin, the easier the board is going to turn. This one, don't know what this one was supposed to be really, but you can see it's been manufactured that way. Almost kind of a weird shape to it, narrow and then wide. So looks like some kind of a murder weapon, doesn't it? Again, never sailed it. I should probably do another video where we actually sort of try these out and see how they work. Acquired this one the other day with this board, in fact these two, and these are quite similar to the fin that I've actually got in here. Again, as you go back in time, you get to the kind of interesting colours. So these two fins are, I think, more or less identical. Yeah, not a lot in it. I think this one was off of an old Tiger, so it's a tasteful kind of orange colour, and this black one here, you can see a bit of a swept kind of look to it. Quite an upright fin. Also got this tasty blue one, so if you don't like the black, go for the blue. And then how about this? I even kind of posted this thing on the old school windsurfers group, and someone kindly identified this one as being, so there was a brand called Lipsticks, and that's sticks with an X on the end, and they made mast bases in the 80s with a pretty kind of distinctive kind of lipstick shape to the bit that actually locked your mast foot into the board, and allegedly this is one of the fins that they made. Good, innit? I'm not sure I would use it because it's kind of clearly split at the bottom and had, yeah, an even worse filler job than I tend to do, and the front doesn't quite look secure either. I think the first knock is probably going to take the rest of that all the way out in terms of the little securing hole. But yeah, interesting to see. So yeah, from the functional to the historical to the plainly pretty insane, but definitely some interesting designs. I guess one of the questions for people is always, well, what works, what's best? I mean, if you've got access to fins that are sort of more in keeping with what we use these days, absolutely great. If you're sailing older boards and longboards, and there's a whole variety of kind of ancient recreational kit still out there that, yeah, hey, it's not great, but people may be using it. And the fact is, if you are, pretty much anything could work in terms of a fin. If you're not out there to win races and you're out just doing basic stuff, any fin, you know, is going to keep your board going in a straight line if it's a reasonably functional shape. And the fact is when you're using older boards like this, when you look at how kind of parallel the rails are, when you look at kind of the the amount of board that's in the water most of the time that you're sailing it, there's more than just the fin keeping the board on the straight and narrow, and the rails do a lot to offer, you know, lateral resistance. Rig-wise, again, on these older boards, smaller tends to be better anyway. A board like this will glide very well with a 7.5 metre. If you did try and use a 12 metre sail on here, again, the first problem you're going to get is that you're going to overload any of these fins. The good, the bad, or the ugly, they will be completely overloaded. And if you don't just outright snap the fin or suffer with constant spin out, what you will inevitably do is damage or break out the fin box on the board. So really, really better to come at this older equipment in the spirit that it's kind of intended for, rather than trying to kind of make something out of it that it's not. And hey, you can have a lot of fun with the gear as well, within its limitations.